My name is Tim Tavcar, and this is sort of my baby in terms of doing this kind of thing for now, well, since about 2010 in various places and stuff. But we have this wonderful home now, thanks to the wonderful people here at the Lakewood Presbyterian Church. And it's great because it's a great place, as you hear, acoustically and everything like that. So we're having a great time, and it's really great to see all of you here tonight. And I'm particularly celebrating Pride Month here in Cleveland. And because of that, we're doing a program about Oscar Wilde, Bram Stoker, and Walt Whitman. Bram Stoker and Oscar Wilde both met, as you will hear, Walt Whitman, when they were in this country. Oscar Wilde, when he was age 27, came over to do a promotion for the operetta Patience, the Gilbert and Sullivan opera Patience, because one of the characters was modeled, satirized by him. And he was doing a huge tour of the United States. And Bram Stoker was the manager of the Lyceum Theatre in London, and they came over to this country to do tours in New York and Philadelphia and whatnot. And they were both idols of Whitman's poetry, which they saw in London in a very bastardized version of it, a lot of cutting and things like that. But so they both wrote to him, and he wrote back, and they both met each other at separate times. It's not at the same time. So we will start with Mr. Wilde, and we will then finish with Mr. Stoker, and I will be the constant, Mr. Wheat. And we are very, very fortunate to have back with us after a lamentably short absence, no, long absence, violinist Mary Beth Lyons, who will now play the overture, which is the excerpts from the overture to the operetta Patience. Thank you very much.
The illustrious Gilbert and Sullivan.
Yes.
Thank
Mr. Wilde. The top floor den that my generous brother and sister-in-law have given me to do much of my ruminating and writing. It is not much, as you see, but it affords me the privacy to work, and on rare occasions to receive such interesting guests as yourself.
And I am honored that you extended your invitation to me, Mr. Whitman, as I am certain that you do not know very much about me. No one in this country does, for that matter. But it is my aim to change all that through my lectures, which, so I understand from my tour managers, will take me to many American cities across this vast country of yours.
Ah, yes, I want to hear about those. But let us dispense with formalities. I see my visitors here so that we can be on a more intimate thee and thou basis. So from now on, you shall call me Walt, and I shall call you Oscar.
I like that so much.
I must be straightforward with you and tell you that I was not sure whether I was going to warm up to you. I have so many so-called admirers who only seek to raise their own statures through an association with me. I put a stop to that with a sort of questionnaire which I send to those who wish to solicit my company. I call it "To a New Personal Admirer," and put several questions to them.
What sort of questions?
Oh, personal things, really, such as, do you suppose you will find in me your true ideal of manliness and of love? Or, do you suppose yourself advancing on real ground towards a real heroic man? And finally, do you think it is so easy to have me become your lover?
My word, some very forthright inquiries.
Indeed. I asked them deliberately to separate the wheat from the chaff, as it were. Believe me, it did just that, as only the sincerest of potential friends and colleagues answered them.
I might have been hard-pressed myself to respond appropriately and worthily to those questions.
Oh, nonsense, Oscar. I have read news of you in the New York papers and your interviews with the Philadelphia press. When the reporters asked you what poet you most admire in American literature, you answered, I think Walt Whitman and Ralph Waldo Emerson have given the world more than anyone else. I do hope to meet Mr. Whitman. I admire him intensely.
And now that I have had the pleasure of meeting you in person, I can say that you are the simplest, most natural, and strongest character I have ever met in my life. And your poetry, well, I believe there is something so Greek, so sane about it. It is so universal, so comprehensive.
Ah, Oscar, if I were still capable of blushing, your words would certainly have brought rosiness to my wrinkled cheeks. And it is interesting, not to say very observant of you, to mention Emerson, as he was a great hero of mine when I self-published my first collection of Leaves of Grass. He made a speech back in 1837, the gist of which was that society rarely regarded a man as a whole person, but reduced him to less than the sum of his parts. He said that my work restored men to their whole potential, and that Leaves of Grass met the demands he was always making. Here, he said, was an American poet who embraced the totality of man and celebrated him as fully as embodied individuals. Emerson wrote to me this one beautiful sentence. He said, I greet you at the beginning of a great career. You know, I feel that for a long time, sexuality has been excluded from literature. No more. I say that the body of a man or a woman, the main matter is so far quite unexpressed in poems. But the body is to be expressed, and sex is. And the place to do it was in American literature. And the way to do it was by writing the truths about men's appetites. What is a man, anyhow? I wrote Leaves of Grass to establish the nobility of the American working man. When I pictured men of the sea and horse drivers, gunners, and fishermen, I praised their blend of manly form with the poetic in outdoor people. The ripple of masculine muscle has its place in poetry. In my book, I wanted to show that a working poet is as manly as a marching fireman, and wrestling wrestlers could be just as poetic. All we had were the expressions of diluted, deferential love, as in songs and fictions and so forth. And it was enough to make a man vomit Replace it with a truer picture of love and human nature so that the true desires, relationships, and sexualities of men and women, men and men, and women, all their affections and relationships can be celebrated. Poetry should be the song of sex and amativeness and even animality.
My dear Mr. Walt, it is thrilling to hear you speak in this manner. Thrilling, provocative, and perhaps a bit dangerous in these repressive times.
Well, I admit that I do love any opportunity to expound on my various theories and beliefs. But enough about me for a while. I really know next to nothing about you, Oscar. Do tell me something about yourself. And you can begin by revealing when and how you first got interested in my work.
Well, I come to you as one with whom I have been acquainted almost from the cradle. From the time I was 11 years old, my mother read your Leaves of Grass to me. Goodness knows how she got her hands on one of the earliest copies of it. Not William Rossetti's horrible dismemberment of the book that was published in Britain, which excised a full half of the poems they felt were too scandalous, not to say obscene, for the British public. Fortunately, she was somehow able to secure one of your original, unabridged American editions. She made it a habit of reading passages of it to me. They remained in my head and heart for many a year. Now, there were many of my parents' family and friends who totally disapproved of this practice. They were horrified that my mother would, well, as they put it, poison my innocent young mind with such obscenities. But my mother was undaunted. Soon we were reading your marvelous and evocative verses together, and with much delight and admiration. And if and when I did not grasp the full and true meaning of your words, she would unhesitatingly reveal the excitements and emotions and the sheer beauty of what your words truly meant. I reveled in them. The cheeky lad that I was, I would invite school friends over to hear us read them. I would say, come home with me. I want to introduce you to my mother. We have founded a society for the suppression of virtue. And yes, that blessed woman took every opportunity to foster my independence and explore the adult perceptions and tastes she shared with me to the fullest. I was so hoping to meet you, as I admire you and your work so intensely. Dante, Rossetti, Swinburne, William Morris, and I often discuss you. And now that you have so generously invited me to your home to meet and have intelligent discourse with you, oh, the sublime tales I shall have to tell them. They will be many shades of green with envy. And if I come away from this memorable afternoon with more knowledge of your craft, celebrations of hitherto forbidden subjects, and of course, you're imparting to me all your secrets for self-promotion. For I intend to become as famous in Britain as you are in America. I will be happy beyond measure.
Aha! Now we come to the real reason for your visit, Oscar. You want to gain some positive publicity by courting my attention. But from what I have already read in the New York and Philadelphia papers, I think you would not need any of my help in getting notoriety that you feel that you are due.
Please, Walt, I hope that you do not think I am quite so shallow. It was my intention to hopefully arrange a meeting with you and discuss everything, absolutely everything. From your life, to your poetry, to your revolutionary way of bringing the celebration of real sensuality to a public which has hitherto been deaf and blind to what your words teach and preach, including your uncanny success at self-promotion. For after all, you are a genius at that, as well as in your life and work. And if I am to be a success here in America, I have to be a success on the speaking tour. Our mutual acquaintance, John Stoddard, now owns the distribution of all the rights to Messrs. Gilbert and Sullivan's operettas, engaged me to expound on the philosophy of the aesthetic movement in Britain. All the better for them to understand the subtleties of their new operetta, Patience, which is soon to open in New York and hopefully travel the country. Oh, and one of the principal characters in the operetta is a satirization of yours truly.
Ah, excellent. The world of arts and letters is taking notice of you. And to further your aim of gaining greater recognition for your talents, what have you done so far?
Well, not all that very much. I had 140 printings of myself in aesthetic garb to use as calling cards in every theater that has booked my lecture. It started out well in New York. My initial performance at Chickering Hall, the 1,250-seat theater, was sold out. Of course, it took a lot of my going to many parties, standing in reception rooms for hours as the invited assemblage defiled before me for an introduction. Most of the time, I just bow graciously and occasionally honor them with a royal observation.
Well, I will tell you, Oscar, that a writer, if that is truly what you want to be, who is in search of fame, must fashion himself as a literary artifact. Your aesthetic movement may be all the rage in Britain now, but like all fads, it will not last. You must, if you are serious, cultivate yourself as a writer to be reckoned with. Now, here is an example. When news of your visit to me was received by the various publications in the area, I was besieged with requests for their reporters to be present. No reporters were invited to witness our meeting. And do you know why?
No, Walt, I should have thought it would have been an excellent opportunity to garner more publicity for us. It seems to me to be a strange choice to make for self-promoters like ourselves.
But think for a moment, Oscar. What do you think will happen after you leave me?
Well, I would think that interviewers from the various presses will probably ask me to give an account of what... now I see.
Indeed. We will undoubtedly both be asked by more than one source to give them our impressions of each other and what it is we spoke about. Through those separate interviews, we will double the attention we will ultimately receive.
You are a canny devil, Mr. Walt Whitman.
Fame as a writer is only partly about literature. It's also about committing oneself to a performance, which you are already doing. And to hell with whatever critics might say, such role-playing isn't the act of a phony. Every pose you strike, every word you utter in public must be authentic to your art and the way you wish it to be perceived. In our life and work, there is nothing inglorious about seeking glory.
I am so happy to hear you say that, Walt. And in that vein, I have a proposition for you. Our mutual friend, John Stoddard, has suggested that we share an open carriage ride through these wintry Philadelphia streets. He feels would attract maximum publicity for the both of us. He pictures us rolling through the streets of the city of brotherly love, visible to all, thereby realizing a raft of publicity for the two of us, and likely more than a few dollars as well at the patient's box office.
Well, regrettably, I must decline this audacious and rather bizarre offer, Oscar. As you see, I am an invalid and just now suffering from an extra bad spell of ill health, and thus forbidden by my doctors to go out at night in this weather.
Of course. Forgive me for even mentioning it.
You know that I was a journalist in a former occupation, so I know my way around the art of what is involved in publishing and what garners the most interest in readership. And while I credit Mr. Stoddard for his inventiveness, I am afraid I cannot oblige him or you in this, what would be for me, foolhardy venture. Oh, but let us turn the conversation back to you, Oscar. What do you foresee for yourself as you develop your own poetic voice?
Oh, I started out well enough, winning a prestigious prize at the Newdigate competition in poetry at Oxford. I took that as a good omen and immediately got to work on my own compilation of poetical works, albeit self-published.
So now tell me, are you going to have the courage to do something new with poetry and your art movement? Will you dare to question the age's pieties? What revolutions do you have in store?
Well, I've been so caught up with writing my lectures and preparing for this trip abroad that, well, I'm afraid I've left my poetical muse wither on the vine, as they say. But I do have some ideas.
You must have the courage of your convention, my handsome aesthete. All of you in your circle, are you not going to shove the established idols like Tennyson and Swinburne aside?
Tennyson's rank is too well fixed, and we love him too much. But he has not allowed himself to be part of the living world. I and my cadre of aesthetes, on the other hand, move in the very heart of the world of today, and we intend to revolutionize the written word to reflect that.
You are young and ardent, and the field is wide. I say, if you want my advice, to go ahead, challenge and change everything.
I cannot express how deeply your words and advice affect me. I shall endeavor to emulate everything you have been so gracious to share with me in all my future literary pursuits.
Oh, but take care, my young friend. While it is always a good thing to listen to the advice of others, you must establish your own voice. You must be true to your own instincts and use your own philosophies and life experiences to enrich your literary creations, in whatever medium you choose to work.
Well, I'm hoping to gain many new life experiences during this tour I'm on.
Oh, indeed you will, my dear Oscar. From the glittering theaters of the East Coast cities to your visits to the rough and ready music halls, and more than likely several saloons west of the Mississippi River.
I have no doubt that I shall learn much. And I think that what I have learned from you during this visit will stand me in good stead in conveying my message of the aesthetic principles to which our movement aspires.
I should be most happy if you drop me a letter from time to time during your tour to get your impressions of this remarkably diverse country of ours.
Oh, I shall, Walt. I expect to be spending many hours on your trains in which I will be engaged in a variety of writing projects. And our conversation today has certainly inspired me to broaden my vision of what I could be capable of, providing that I pay heed to your sage advice.
And on that note, my dear Oscar, we must bring this delightful visit to a close. I have some writing to do, prompted by this most interesting afternoon. And I am sure you must prepare for your appearances this evening to the proper citizenry of Philadelphia. I am sure your wit and wisdom will charm everyone. This meeting was memorable. When I read what you said of me in the newspapers, I knew that I must invite you. For after all, you had the good sense to fancy me. So, how could I deny myself the opportunity of meeting you?
Thank you, Walt. I have an admiration for you that I can hardly express. Farewell. I feel that this conversation will stay with me forever.
God bless you, Oscar. Another day and yet more letters. This one looks interesting. From an Abraham Stoker in Britain. Well, let us see if he be friend or foe. My dear Mr. Whitman, I hope you will not consider this letter from an utter stranger a liberty. Indeed, I hardly feel a stranger to you, nor is this the first letter that I have written to you. My friend Edward Dowden has told me often that you like new acquaintances, or I should rather say friends. And as an old friend, I send you an enclosure which may interest you. 4 years ago, I wrote the enclosed draft of a letter which I intended to copy out and send to you. It has lain in my desk since then. But it speaks for itself and needs no comment. It is truly what I wanted to say then, as that light is light. The 4 years which have elapsed have made me love your work fourfold, and I can truly say that I have ever spoken as your friend. You know what hostile criticism your work sometimes evokes here, and I wage a perpetual war with many friends on your behalf. But I am glad to say that I have been the means of making your work known to many who were scoffers at first. The years have passed have not been uneventful to me, and I have felt and thought and suffered much in them. And I can truly say that from you I have received much pleasure and consolation. And I do believe that your open and earnest speech has not been thrown away on me, or that my life and thought failed to be marked with its impress. I write this openly because I feel with you one must be open. I only hope that we may sometime meet, and I shall be able perhaps to say what I cannot write. Dowden promised to get me a copy of your new edition, and I hope for any other work which you may have, you will always let me be an early subscriber. I am sorry to hear that you are not strong. Many of us are hoping to see you in Ireland. We had arranged to have a meeting for you. I do not know if you like getting letters. If you do, I shall be only too happy to send you news of how thought goes among the men I know. With truest wishes for your health and happiness, believe me, your friend, Bram Stoker. What a curious and heartfelt missive. I shall read the other letter he enclosed. Perhaps I will discover more sides and aspects of this interesting young man.
If you are the man I take you to be, you will like to get this letter. If you are not, I don't care whether you like it or not, and only ask that you put it into the fire without reading any farther. But I believe you will like it. I don't think there's a man living, even you, who are above the prejudices of the class of small-minded men, who wouldn't like to get a letter from a younger man, a stranger, across the world, a man living in an atmosphere prejudiced to the truths you sing and your manner of singing them. The idea that arises in my mind is whether there is a man living who would have the pluck to burn a letter in which he felt the smallest atom of interest without reading it. I believe you would, and that you believe you would yourself. You can burn this now and test yourself, and all I will ask for my trouble of writing this letter, for which all I can tell you, you may light your pipe, or light your pipe with, or apply to some more ignoble purpose, is that you will in some manner let me know that my words have tested your patience. Put it in the fire if you like, but if you do, you will miss the pleasure of the next sentence, which ought to be that you have conquered an unworthy impulse. A man who is certain of his own strength may try to encourage himself a piece of bravo, but a man who can write, as you have written, the most candid words that ever fell from the lips of a mortal man, a man to whose candor Rousseau's Confessions is reticence, can have no fear for his own strength. If you have gone this far, you may read the letter, and I feel in writing now I am talking to you. If I were before your face, I would like to shake hands with you, for I feel that I would like you. I would like to call you comrade and talk to you as men who are not poets do not often talk. I think at first a man would be ashamed, for a man cannot in a moment break the habit of comparative reticence that has become second nature to him. But I know I would not long be ashamed to be natural before you. You are a true man, and I would like to be one myself. And so I would be towards you as a brother and as a pupil to his master. In this age, no man becomes worthy of the name without an effort. You have shaken off the shackles and your wings are free. I have the shackles on my shoulders still, but I have no wings. If you are going to read this letter any further, I should tell you that I am not prepared to give up all else as far as words go. The only thing I am prepared to give up is prejudice. And before I knew you, I had begun to throw overboard my cargo. But it is not all gone yet. I do not know how you will take this letter. I have not addressed to you in any form, as I hear that you dislike to a certain degree the conventional forms of letters. I am writing to you because you are different from other men. If you were the same as the mass, I would not write at all. As it is, I must either call you Walt Whitman, or not call you at all. And I have chosen the latter course. I do not know whether it is unusual for you to get letters from utter strangers who have not even the claim of literary brotherhood to write you. If it is, you must be frightfully tormented with letters, and I am sorry to have written this. I have, however, the claim of liking you, for your words are your own soul. And even if you do not read my letter, it is no less a pleasure to me to write it. Shelley wrote to William Godwin and they became friends. I am not Shelley, and you are not Godwin, and so I will only hope that sometime I may meet you face to face and perhaps shake hands with you. If I ever do, it will be one of the greatest pleasures of my life. Since then, I have to thank you for many happy hours, for I have read your poems with my door locked late at night, and have read them on the seashore, where I could look around me and see no more signs of human life than the ships out at sea. And here, I often found myself waking up from a reverie with a book open before me. I love all poetry, and high generous thoughts make the tears rush to my eyes. But sometimes a word or phrase of yours, me away from the world around me and places me in an ideal land surrounded by realities more than any poem I ever read. Last year, I was sitting on the beach on a summer's day reading your preface to The Leaves of Grass as printed in Rossetti's edition, for Rossetti is all I have got to the complete set of your works which I have ordered from America. One thought struck me, and I pondered over it for several hours. The weather-beaten vessels entering new ports. And you who wrote the words know them better than I do. And to you who sing of your land of progress, the words have a meaning that I can only imagine. But be assured of this, Walt Whitman, that a man of less than half your age, reared a conservative in a conservative country, and has always heard your name cried down by the great mass of people who mention it. Here, felt his heart leap toward you across the Atlantic, and his soul swelling at the words, or rather thoughts. It is vain for me to quote an instance of what thoughts of yours I like best, for I like them all, and you must feel you are reading the true words of one who feels with you. You see, I have called you by your name. I have been more candid with you, have said more about myself to you than I have said to anyone before. You will not be angry with me if you have read so far. You will not laugh at me for writing this to you. It was no small effort that I began to write, and I feel reluctant to stop, but I must not tire you anymore. If you would ever care to have more than you can imagine, for you have a great heart, how much pleasure it would be for me to write more to you. How sweet a thing it is for a strong, healthy man with a woman's eye and a child's wishes to feel that he can speak to a man who can be, if he wishes, father and brother and wife to his soul. I don't think you will laugh, Walt Whitman, nor despise me. But at all events, I thank you for all the love and sympathy you have given me in common with my kind. Yours sincerely, Bram Stoker.
My dear young man, your letters have been most welcome to me. Welcome to me as a person, and then as an author. I don't know which most. You did well to write to me so unconventionally, so fresh, so manly, and affectionately too. I too hope, though it is not probable, that we will meet someday, personally. Meantime, I send my friendship and thanks. You seem to me to be a most charming and sassy youngster. And as to burning your epistle up or not, it never occurred to me at all. What the hell do I care whether you're pertinent or impertinent? You are fresh, breezy Irish. That is the price paid for admission to my sanctuary. And it is enough. You are most welcome. Edward Dowden's letter containing, among other things, your subscription for a copy of my new edition has been received. I shall send the book very soon by express in a package to his address. My physique is shattered, doubtless permanently, from paralysis and other ailments. But I am up and dressed and get out a little every day, live here quite lonesome, but hearty and in good spirits. I do receive many letters which please me, and many are full of kind thoughts and appreciations of my work, such as in both your own beautifully written and honest missives. There is something in personal love, caresses, and the magnetic flood of sympathy and friendship that does, in its way, more good than all the medicine in the world.
My dear Mr. Whitman, I have some wonderful news. Henry Irving, who is one of Britain's most lauded actors, has a wonderful theater, the Lyceum here, and it is my great good fortune to have been hired to be the company manager. He has informed me that he has decided to bring the Lyceum Theater to America, and that it will be stopping in Philadelphia. This affords me the opportunity to come to Camden to meet you in person, should you have the time and desire to meet me.
I cannot but warmly respond to one whose letters were so truly personal. Come, I extend my invitation with my whole heart. Come, enter.
Mr. Whitman.
Bram Stoker. Abraham Stoker, is it?
Indeed it is, Mr. Whitman.
Ah, there will be no formalities between us, young man. You will call me Walt, and I will call you Bram.
I am honored, Walt.
Now, the first thing that I want to know is, how is Mr. Irving's tour going?
Well, we have only played New York so far, but I must say all the performances there were quite a success. I have no doubt Mr. Irving and his company would be very well received, but I must say I was a bit worried that all the arrangements that needed to be made to support the company would be a bit overwhelming. Mr. Irving did not want to stint on the production values for his first American tour, and that required transporting and finding proper accommodations for not only a large cast of players, but lavish sets and voluminous costumes as well as making arrangements for publicity, ticketing, and working with the various managers of the theaters we will be playing. A lot of work, but I am used to it.
So, you are responsible for everything besides the actual acting. Everything else falls upon your
I
shoulders?
suppose it does.
Well, you look like a hale and hearty lad. I am sure that there is nothing too daunting for you to tackle.
Well, that was not always the case. I was a very weak and sickly child, overcome by an illness that was impossible to identify. Through the age of 7, I literally had to be carried everywhere my family and I went. Fortunately, around the age of 12, I went through a significant growth spurt, and by the time I got to college, I participated in various forms of sport and was a success in some of them, and won awards for weightlifting, endurance walking, and rugby.
I have no doubt.
But my real passion in college was debating. I honed my skills at the University Philosophical Club and the College Historical Society. They came in very handy when I became a champion of your work.
Well, I am sure that would have kept you very busy. My writing has had a difficult time being accepted in Britain.
Well, not so much now. There are many of us who celebrate your literary accomplishments both privately and publicly.
Tell me, young fellow, how did you first become acquainted with my work?
The way I came to you was this. A notice of your poems appeared some 2 years ago in Temple Bar magazine. I glanced at it and took its dictum as final and laughed at you among friends. I say it to my own shame, but not to regret, for it has taught me a lesson to last my life out without ever having seen your poems. More than a year later, I heard 2 men in college talking of you. One of them had your book, Rossetti's edition, and was reading aloud some passages at which both laughed. But they chose only those passages which are the most foreign to British ears and made fun of them. Something struck me that I had judged you hastily. And not long after, I accepted a copy of your book from a man who seemed to be eager to part with it. I took the book with me to the park and, in the shade of an elm tree, began to read it. Very shortly, my own opinion began to form. It was diametrically opposed to what I had been hearing from my sophomoric schoolmates. From that hour, I became a lover of Walt Whitman.
Well, my young friend, I can only say that I am very gratified that your conversion was so total and complete. I need and value champions of my work, and your efforts on my behalf in Britain has, I am sure, resulted in the kind of understanding and acceptance of what I try to articulate in my work. And speaking of work, does your schedule at the Lyceum Theatre leave you any time for more creative endeavors?
No. I did write some very poor short stories for a while, all based on imitations of popular penny dreadfuls. But I have recently had 3 of my short stories published and a request for more. So perhaps your influence is taking hold and I shall write a grand novel one of these days.
With your seemingly unquenchable thirst for knowledge, and what I observe as an enormous drive to be a success at whatever you bring your hand to, I have no doubt that you will.
Walt, do you mind if I ask you what might be a delicate question?
I won't know if I mind until you ask it.
I have been speaking with our mutual friend at the Philadelphia Express, Talcott Williams, and he feels if you would let them cut 100 lines from the current edition of Leaves of Grass, he feels that your books could go into every house in America. Is that not worth the sacrifice?
It would not be any sacrifice. So far as I'm concerned, they might cut 1,000. It is not that. It is quite another matter. When I wrote as I did, I thought I was doing right, and that right makes for good. I think so still. I think that all God has made is for good, and that the work of his hands is clean in all ways, if he used as he intended. If I was wrong, I have done harm, and for that I deserve to be punished and forgotten. It has been and cannot be. No, I shall never cut a line as long as I live.
Very well, Walt. I understand and honor what you have said, and I will urge anyone who has a thought of truncating your work is not able to do so, at least in my lifetime.
You are a good man, Abraham Stoker. A breath of fresh sea breeze. It has been an honor and a pleasure to meet you.
The honor and pleasure has been mine, Walt Whitman. May you create more great works of literature, so that we acolytes may revel in the joy of reading your words and putting into practice your celebrations of life and love between all.
We're taking a break for the summer, but we will be back in September. Our first production then will be the Algonquin Roundtable with a lot of music by George Gershwin to accompany it. So, see you in a few months. Everyone have a wonderful summer. Thank you so much for coming tonight.
Excuse me,
Yes, I do.
Tim, isn't there a performance at Parma Library?
Oh, I forgot about that, yes.
That's going to be delightful. It's featuring Ukrainian
Well, it's hopefully,
really influential.
yes, the Liquid Library some time ago commissioned us to do a program when they were doing their Dear Ukraine thing on Ukraine's national poet Taras Shevchenko. And we did that program. Two other really wonderful actor friends of mine who you've seen here before, Agnes and Paul, and Mary Beth and Carol, her good friend, play violin duets of Ukrainian origin. So it should be fun. It's on the 22nd of June. I think it's 7
7
o'clock at the Parma Heights
Parma
later.
Heights.
So if you're tooling around Parma Heights, stop it. Thank you all so much for coming. And there's no